So my most asked question as a makeup artist is, how do I apply my makeup? What brushes do I use? What sponges do I use? What's the best brand that has everything? And the one brand that I will always tell people to go to is Spectrum. So I've basically filmed a little makeup look for you to create flawless makeup application, flawless base, glowy skin, and everything you need to know all about Spectrum brushes, because they're my favourite. They're just the best. First thing I like to do when I have prepped and primed my skin is go in with brows. So I like to use the soap brows technique, and for this I use the Spectrum A24 brush. It's got the spoolie brush on one end, and then you've actually got sort of like a very fine tapered liner brush on the other end. I personally like to use a pencil, but you can use eyeshadow with this, or you can use like a pomade for your brows with this end. Also, I really like using this for liner, like on my eyes, so it's a really good sort of all-rounder. So I've just applied some of my soap onto the spoolie end. Brush them upwards in the direction that they grow in, and then I basically just like to brush them the other way too. Really sort of pressing down onto the hair and give you that very sort of laminated brow look. That's what I like to do. I love a fluffy brow. My favourite foundation brush is the C07. I am obsessed with this because it's like a perfect multi-purpose brush for your base. You can do sort of everything with this. I like to apply my foundation with it, my concealers, cream contour, cream blush. So I also really like to use is their sponge if I want more of a sort of lighter base, or if I want to take away any product, if I felt like I've applied too much. So if I want a sheerer finish, I'll use the sponge. I've just popped on a little bit of Flawless Filter onto the back of my hand, and I'm going to pick that up with the sponge and just apply to the high points of the face. I love using the sponge because it just applies everything really, really evenly and smoothly. It doesn't absorb too much product at all. It just applies your base flawlessly. For foundation, I've mixed a little cocktail onto the back of my hand, and then I'm going to take my C07, start applying onto the centre of the face, and then I'm going to stipple and buff outwards. So the foundation that I'm using is a very light coverage because I want the skin to look really natural. That's why I'm going in with the brush, because it will ensure that I have maximum coverage from the products that I use. But you can see how smoothly the brush just applied the foundation. There's no streaks, there's no lines. This brush just kind of gets into all of the little contours of the face. It's very, very quick and easy. Going in with the A29, which is like a little baby mini C07, and this is what I love to apply my concealer with. And it just applies product amazingly. It gets into all of the little areas of the face. It buffs it out really, really seamlessly. Where I want a little bit more coverage, so for a little bit of a problematic area that I'm experiencing here, I'll take the brush and very, very lightly just sort of circle and etch around the spot that I want more coverage on. Also, you can kind of add a little stippling motion, and it will just pack the product on where you want it, rather than applying loads and loads of foundation and thick concealers and extra product that you don't really need. The brushes don't absorb product too much at all, so there's no wasting product there either. I've just applied some of my cream bronzer onto the back of my hand, and I'm going to take the C07 again, and I'm going to pick that up and dab where I want to contour and add some warmth into the face. Now, this is what I was saying before about the C07 being really good at being your sort of like all-rounder multi-purpose base brush, because it really does just help you apply that contour the way that it should be applied. It's not too big, it's not too small. It really sort of, because of the tapered edge, it really gets into that contour of the face. I like to just go over the bridge of the nose, and this is just like the perfect sort of fit. It's that nice little sun-kissed look, you know? So you can then go in with the sponge if you want to pick up any sort of excess product. If you feel like you've applied too much, just take your sponge and go over all of the face in stippling and bouncing motions. You never want to swipe because that's just going to pick up all of the product. So the next brush I'm going to use for powder is the D04. This is my favourite one for powder because it is a duo fibre brush. So the bristles are shorter and longer throughout the whole brush, and it basically just doesn't apply powder too thick or like sort of heavy at all. I find that some powder brushes can just whack the powder on, and that's not the kind of look that I like to do. So I like to apply a really small amount of powder and have a really light layer of it. Stipple over the areas where I want to set the most first. In my opinion, the less product, the better. I like to use a lot of light layers. And then I go over the eyes as well, just to set before I go in with eyeshadow. I will always have 2 blender brushes with me no matter what. They don't have to be the same, they can be, but I really love the B07 and then the B06. The B06 is more of a larger, rounded, fluffy brush, and then the B07 has more of that tapered tip to it, so I can get right into the crease. I can create a little bit of shape with that. So I'm going to show you how I use these. I love this palette. I feel like it's a perfect all-rounded palette. I go in with Celestial, and I'm just going to pick a little bit of that up and work my way into the crease and create a little bit of a shape buffing outwards. One thing that's really great about the B07 is because of the tapered edge, what it will basically do is from the tip it applies the product, and then the shorter bristles on the outer corner here, that is what is going to help blend the product. So you're applying and blending at the same time. Obviously you're doing that with the movement, so you want to work sort of backwards and forwards and upwards and outwards. The brush itself just helps everything blend a little bit easier. I'm just going to use the very tip of that brush just to apply that Celestial shade on the inner corner and almost create a little bit of a halo effect on the eye. And then I'm going to repeat that step with Nebula. This is more of a warm, chocolatey brown kind of shade. Really, really nice at bronzing up the eye. And I'm just going to sort of pat that in first where I want it. And right on the inner corner there as well. I'll take the B06, which is the bigger fluffy brush. Just going to make the edges look super seamless and blended, and you don't need any extra product on the brush for this. Just keep this as your clean blender brush on hand. Then for the lower lash line, I'm going to take the A13, which is a very small, very densely packed brush that just gets right onto the lower lash line, blends the product really nicely. I also like to use this for blending liner on the top of my eyes as well if I go in with that. But I'm going to mix Celestial and Nebula together, and I'm basically just going to buff really softly under the eye and bring that out. So I'm going to use this to pack on a tiny little bit more product onto the outer corner of the eye here, just to add a little bit more depth. And because this brush is so tiny and densely packed, it means that it will just do the work for you again. I mean, all of Spectrum brushes, I find that I don't really need to do much work. I'm going in quickly with the A29 again, which was my concealer brush, and I'm just going to sharpen that edge of the eyeshadow up so I get that really sharp feline shape. The A29 is like my fixer brush. I just find that it fixes everything. Any mistakes, any little bits that I want to clean up, any little bits that I want to sharpen, just does it really effortlessly. Going to use the Spectrum A28 brush. This is actually from the Cruella de Vil range. All of the brushes that I've been using, these are their classic collection, but this one I love as well. So I just kind of wanted to show you that they do some fun brushes too. I'm going to pick some of that up here. Just make sure I get any sort of excess onto the palm of my hand here. So rather than tapping off on the brush, you're just kind of like wasting product. If you tap it into your hand, you're pushing the pigment into the brush more, and then it's going to apply better. And that shade is just so pretty. Just a little pab. Now that sort of most of the product is gone from this brush, because it's not too densely packed, then I can go in onto the very edges of where I applied that Constellation shade and just blend that out And I'm going to go in with the A13 again and repeat the same step, but just on the lower lash line. I'm going to go back in with the A24 brush. I'm going to take Dark Matter, tilt the brush and look sort of straight ahead into my mirror. And then I can see where I want the wing to kind of go. And you just kind of place it on. Because the brush is tapered and it's quite long, you kind of just press and go. This is a little trick that I do with Spectrum's lip brush. So this is the A15. I like to blend out any pencil liners that I use with this. I get complete precision and it just makes sure that the liner goes where I want it to go when I'm blending it out. Just want to soften the edges really, really lightly. And this brush does that for me. I've just curled my lashes and then I'm going to go in with the Dark Matter mascara. I'm obsessed with this. I love this mascara so much. I have like 3 backups for my kit. I've got 3 backups for myself down here. It's just a perfect mascara and it leaves my lashes lifted throughout the whole day, which hardly any mascara does for me. It is super black. It doesn't smudge. It adds length. It lifts. It thickens. It's just a perfect everyday mascara as well. One that you can wear really lightly, but then one that you can amp up for nighttime and go really thick with this too. So that's the eye look done. I'm going to move on to the rest of my face. For bronzer, blush, that kind of thing, I like to go in with these 2 brushes. So this is the A05 and then the A04. I'm going to go in with the A05 brush, which is your perfect angled cheek brush. It's not too dense at all. So it blends product really nicely and doesn't apply too much, and you won't have any muddy looking bronzers or blush. It just smooths product over. I find this sculpts the jawline really nicely too, just with how it fits in here perfectly, and then glide along. If you want to go and contour a little bit more precisely, I like to go in with the A04 brush because it has that tapered edge and it's quite rounded, so it will fit really nicely into the contours of the face. So I'm just picking up my bronzer and I'm packing that where I want to contour, where I want a shadow more intensely, and then I can go and buff that out. For blush, I'm going to go in with this Spectrum Moonlight. It's a really sort of nice pinky purpley tone and it adds a really nice sheen onto the face as well. Now I'm going to go on to highlight, which is my favourite thing ever. What I like to use for highlighter is the B08 brush, and then for the inner corners of the eye, I like to use the A12 brush. So I'm going to pick up some of my highlight and just place that in the inner corner of the eye. I mean, oh, would you look at that? Because of how soft the brushes are, they don't irritate the eyes at all. They don't irritate the skin at all. I mean, I've got kind of problematic skin at the moment and I'm finding that anything I apply onto it is just irritating. That's why I love Spectrum brushes so much, because they just feel so nice on the skin and they apply product amazingly. Like, that's what you want with your tools. Then I'm just going to go onto the high points of the face with the B08 brush. And I'm going to work that into the brow bone. Yay! Okay, so I've taken my hair out and now I've just applied some lip liner and I can go in with one of my favourite lipsticks ever. You're about to see how loved it is. I'm on its last legs, I really am. It is just like my favourite, one of my favourite nude lipsticks ever. Because it's like literally gone, what I will do is I will use the lip brush for that. So it is the A15 again, which is what I use for my liner, but I just cleaned it off and I'm going to use it for my lips now. So I basically just work it in and then apply. And this really is that perfect nude. It's a matte formula, but they are so creamy on the lips. And the brush just gives that perfect precision. I mean, what I like to do is I rest my pinky onto my chin and then I can fix up the Cupid's bow. And that's the lipstick on, and I'm going to apply some gloss and then we'll be done. So this is the finished makeup look for flawless makeup application using my Spectrum brushes and some of my favourite Spectrum products as well. Let me know what you think, and I love this look. I am glowing. Honestly, one of my favourite brands out there. They do makeup, they do my favourite mascara, and they do one of my favourite nude lipsticks and the best brushes. that I have used, and they're just an amazing company. So if you do go out and get any of the Spectrum brushes on my recommendations, I've linked everything for you, and let me know what you get. And that's that. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.